Launching a game is no easy task, and there are several things that you can do that can either help or hurt your indie game launch. I recently just launched my game a few weeks ago, and I posted a video about 11 things that helped my launch, and if you're interested in that, you can click there and go ahead and watch that video. This video specifically is about the things I did that hurt my game launch. If you're anything like me, you're constantly looking for ways to self-sabotage and do all kinds of stuff that sabotages your success, but today we're gonna move past it. The number one thing that hurt my game launch was the procrastination of my game launch. It's run of the mill, everybody procrastinates. We all say you shouldn't procrastinate and then we all procrastinate, but think about it. What are you doing right now and what should you be doing right now? And if you did the thing that you should be doing, could you get it over with faster? I'm no expert, but that makes sense to me. Number two, underestimating the workload. Oh, Tim, you're a game dev YouTuber. Aren't you supposed to know this? Yes, I have videos about how everyone underestimates the workload. And yes, I underestimated the workload after making videos about how you should not underestimate the workload. Here's the thing, making something as big as a video game is never going to be easy. But when you throw in the fact that video games, unlike other forms of art, are all forms of art. You're talking a literal interactive experience with art, music, sound, all of the arts combined into one. So if you think about that, and then you think about actually making a game by yourself doing all of that, it doesn't seem easy, but the thing is, it seems easier than it actually is. So yes, I've talked about this 1,000 times. Yes, I still did it. I still made a mistake that I told other people to avoid. And so I would just say that you should doubly avoid doing that. I don't think there's any real way to avoid underestimating your workload. So I think the best scenario is to just overestimate your workload. However long it takes, multiply that by 2 or 3 and just see if that helps. Number 3, poor planning. When you plan a game launch, there are so many things that can go wrong. And even if you do everything right, there are so many things that can still go wrong. Had I planned properly, the game would have actually been done in December of last year so that I could launch in February of this year. That would have given me 2 months to effectively market the game and done a traditional launch really. But having underestimated all of that, I ran out of time. I was working on the game up until 3 hours before launch, which everybody told me was a horrible idea. But yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. So while I don't think there's a perfect way to plan everything, I think you need some plan going in. I consider myself a game dev MacGyver. I like to mess with stuff and go with the flow and try things as I go, but doing something this big with so much riding on it, I think I could have planned better. Number 4, underestimating marketing. Tim, you're a game dev YouTuber, but don't you also have marketing experience? Shouldn't you know that marketing is hard? I should probably just rename this video Tim's Hypocrisy. So I didn't underestimate marketing. What I underestimated was the clarity that I wouldn't have. So if you've ever done marketing before, you know that it takes a certain mental mindset. You have to get in the mind of your customer. You have to understand people that would be willing to buy your product. That's easy to say, but it's harder to do. The main thing that I didn't realize though was that I would still be working on the game and my brain would be so occupied with finishing this game and so, I don't know, just like worn out and like not burnt out, but like just exhausted from all of the creative work every single day that I was doing. And so when it came time to actually market, I didn't have the clarity or the desire or the drive or any of that. It was just exhausting. So as a result of that, I did a somewhat untraditional launch. I tried a Founders Edition. I tried to launch on itch versus Steam because I wasn't gonna have the time to properly market a Steam launch. And I think it worked out well in retrospect, but I will definitely in the future keep in mind that one of the biggest problems with marketing independent creations like games is not the marketing itself. It's usually the preoccupation with the project and the lack of clarity that comes with that. At least that was my biggest problem. Number 5, expecting people to see my perspective. Philophobia is a game where love is literal hell and all the enemies are hearts. And it was inspired by a breakup. The game is based on the 5 stages of grief. And it was a dark time for me when I started this whole project. It was like all of my emotions combined into one game and I made this project that was so deeply personal to me. And I thought people would understand. But once again, I learned the age-old lesson that people don't care if your dog dies. They care if their dog dies. And the lack of clarity that came from my inability to market also hurt me when it came to having people understand my perspective with the game. I saw this as so much more than a game and that was the problem because other people only saw it as a game. I don't think this negatively impacted sales or anything like that. I just think it took a toll on me emotionally because what I saw this thing as was not what the world saw it as, and that took some getting used to. Number 6, not testing enough on low-end machines. This is one of those technical things. In modern society, we're surrounded by a bubble, and I happen to run a game developer community. It just so happens that game developer communities usually have higher end hardware, and the testers that I got from said community by default had better hardware than the public. So when launch day came around and everybody bought the game, there were some issues, especially with frame rate. Some of those issues we're still working through, a lot of them have been solved, but I've learned my lesson about testing on lower end machines. I realize now that the majority of the world runs on lower end machines, and that you need to take that into account when you're dealing with a global game launch. Number 7, not launching on Linux and Mac. So in retrospect, this was kind of a weird thing. So I actually could have launched on Linux and Mac. The build that I created would run on all 3 platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac. But I waited for that launch under the assumption that that would be a big announcement and that I could get a second wave of press doing that. In reality, because of the way that I launched the game, what ended up happening is by the time I launched on Linux and Mac, I had lost a lot of the exposure that I was getting. And even though those versions had been requested by multiple people, by the time those versions came out, those people had moved on to other things and nobody saw the game anymore. So I believe I actually lost sales by doing that. I should have launched on all 3 platforms at the same time. There were other things at play. Obviously, like I said, I was working on the game up to 3 hours up until launch, so I was not prepared at all. And I don't think realistically I could have even fit that in, but I kind of would have liked to see what would happen if I did. Number 8, overvaluing knowledge. Oh, goody. We got knowledge, right? We learned a few things. We read a few blogs. We thought we were prepared for this. Turns out knowledge is not the same thing as experience. And no matter what you think you know, when you do the thing that you think you know, you'll learn a bunch of stuff. I think there's a difference between book smarts and actual experience, and I think there's a lot of people that overvalue knowledge, myself included, when they're going into something. And so they do a lot of research, they try and learn a bunch of stuff, and sure, that helps. But leaning too much on knowledge that you learn from external sources and not leaning enough on experience or real world data that you're gathering as you're doing the thing, I think is what led to this mistake. There were a lot of decisions I made, like the Linux and Mac decision, for example, that I made based on things that I had read about or knowledge that I had acquired, not necessarily experience. And if I could do it again, I might lean a little bit more on my gut and the real world data that was coming in and the things that I was watching actually happen and make those decisions live versus plan those out, I guess. Number 9, being scared of critical opinions. This is by far the thing I was terrified of the most. This is the reason my game took 4 years, if I'm being completely honest. It wasn't that I did something that was a technical marvel. It wasn't that I wanted to take time to perfect it. If I am being 100% honest with you, I was terrified that people were gonna shit on it. And what I realized is there's gonna be people that shit on it either way. And you hear that kind of stuff on YouTube all the time. You read that kind of stuff on blogs all the time. But it didn't really sink in, you know? It wasn't like, I didn't really get it until I launched this thing and I realized there are people that love it and there are people that hate it. And that's great. That's okay. Not only is that okay, it's preferable. Because the other option is just to be in the middle and everybody's like, meh. You don't want the meh. You want the lovers and the haters, because that means at least people talk about it. The number one biggest problem in doing any kind of art is fading into obscurity. And so even if someone is talking shit about it, they're talking about it. Number 10, taking too long. I don't really think this needs an explanation. 4 fucking years for a platformer. Next. And number 11, neglecting my life. This one's an emotional one. A lot of the people close to me, I didn't know how to explain the importance of what I was doing. I let a lot of people down. I ignored a lot of people. I poured my heart and soul into a game, but I let my social life fade away. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody complained about it. But after launch, I felt drained. I didn't realize how much I needed those people in my life and how much I needed those experiences with those people until those opportunities stopped coming. I didn't lose any relationships. I still have my friends. I still have my people that are close to me. But I realized kind of what was important. And this is a game. This was really important to me. But it's less important than living a balanced life. I think. And so I think if there's one lesson that I want you as another fellow game developer to take away from this, is that a game launch is not worth your mental health. It wasn't for me, and I'm still suffering the effects of, I don't know if it's some kind of recursion of depression or some kind of post-project depression or some kind of lack of life. I put so much effort into this, and I thought so highly of it, and I worked so hard, and then launch happened and everything stopped, and I realized that the sacrifices that I made to make that happen might not have been worth it. But the good news is I think that it's perfectly doable without those sacrifices. I don't think you need to make these social sacrifices or these relationship sacrifices to finish an indie game. I don't think it's healthy, and I thought that all along, but I did it anyway without really knowing. You know, it's complicated. Do you work super hard and get the shit done and hashtag finish it, or do you take your time and enjoy life and be lax? And I don't think it's black and white. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a little bit of both. You have to kind of be your own sailor and figure out where to sail your boat. And I think balance is a good word. I don't think you're either healthy or not healthy, or happy or not happy. I think it's a spectrum, and it goes back and forth, and that's okay, but you need to understand that. So that's all I got for you. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you hate this video or my face, hit that thumbs down button. My name is Tim Ruswick. This is Game Dev Underground. I will talk to you in the next video.